Hey guys, welcome back to the Awakening Spaces podcast. Today I'm going to be chatting with David Aurbeck of PLH Exclusives. And David is actually a healthy, high performance builder in the Chicago area. And David actually got into doing this work because his wife struggles from environmentally related illness. So he is very well versed in mold and chemical sensitivity. And we talk a lot in this episode about not only building healthier homes, but the emotional struggle of having health issues and in partnership and relationship and how we can really turn our pain into purpose. So if you are building from the ground up, you're not going to want to miss this episode. So let's dive in. Hey, David, how's it going?
It's going great. Thank
Welcome.
you for having me on Awakening Spaces. This is great.
I'm so excited. Welcome to the podcast. You are our first builder that we're interviewing.
Ooh, pressure.
And so, yeah, I'd love for you just to start with an introduction, who you are, and what you do with your building and where you're located as well.
Yeah, so my name is David Aurbeck. I am a first generation builder. I grew up farming with my dad and my family in central Illinois. So I'm very accustomed to a lot of weather changes, right? Like central Illinois has a lot, which a lot of other places too. But my story started in essentially the ag and farm industry, right? And it all started with building my home as like the first thing. And to me, it could be a long story, right? So my journey started with marrying my wife, and we moved into what we later found out was a pretty moldy apartment, and thought about building a house. And actually I asked my wife, I was like, hey, I've always wanted a log home. Would you want to think about building a log home? She's like, actually, yes. I'm like, well, sweet. So let's dig into it, And I just went down the huge rabbit hole of, I had no idea what I was talking about or, trying to learn about it. But I found somebody that did know. I found a good builder that led me to a good log home company. And I just dove deep into GCing my entire house myself, as well as doing a lot of work, to which my wife will remind me there's still work to be done on it. But everybody else's house come first, right? But yeah, it was to the point where the log home company was like, man, we could really use you as being a rep for our company in the central Illinois area. There hasn't been one for a while. And, I was like, oh yeah, sweet. Yeah. But can I finish the house first? You know what I mean? Like, no, we're going to send you. Actually, the first couple, like a family that walked through the house was from South Korea. They had a business in Chicago, right? They didn't want to go see the huge, log home they did for the Crown family in Chicago, because my house is more like what they would build. So I had a bunch of people coming through my house, and it just kind of started into a good process of learning. For one, I didn't sell a home for a long time just because I had no idea what I was doing, right? But it was great though, because I fully inundated myself into the building world on all aspects, between the vendor side and the construction side. Got to know how to deal with subcontractors on a very personal level, got to know the whole process. And so I cut my teeth real hard on the very first thing. And, from there, story goes on, right? We finally backtracked to my wife having a lot of mold issues from her parents' house, the apartment, as well as being in Illinois. Like she has a super high level of mycotoxins that comes from the mold of corn and soybeans and wheat, which is everywhere here. And so when I really found my purpose, it was actually through the pain of my wife. And we're still working through it, right? I mean, I don't really have to have a poster board of, hey, why am I doing this? Like I wake up to it every day, right? There's good days and bad days, and it really helps me motivate to building the best house for same reasons why she has her problems, so no one else has to deal with that. And that's pretty much where I've ended up today, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that you're coming from the other side of the coin. Um, I think that mold takes a big toll on relationships. And what are you just kind of curious, like, what do you what do you guys do as a partnership to manage that? Like, what could you share with other people who might be going through this? And
Oh,
most of the time, husbands, not to like rag on husbands, but most of the time, it's usually the wife and the husband is confused, doesn't understand, and it causes friction.
I might say things that would upset people. Maybe my wife if I go too far saying certain things, right? But she's pretty open about it. She's not like super open about me always having her in Instagram reels and stuff like that all the time because like, when you don't feel good,
Yeah.
right? You don't look good, and if you don't look good, you're like, I don't want anybody to see me go through this, right? Um, but no, you say, what do we do? Actually, some of the better questions would probably be like, what don't we get to do? Right?
Yeah.
Like there's many times where I feel like, and this could be a little deep, but I know that she's there, but she can't be
Hmm.
there like she wants to be, right? Like there's many times where I feel, we have two girls, right? There's many times where I feel like I'm being more of a single dad to three girls than a dad of two and a husband of my wife. You know what I mean? Because it's just like it's hard to expect a relationship from someone that's going through so much,
Yeah.
and I don't wish that on anybody, right? Which is another reason, motivation to what I do. I mean, we don't really have date nights. It's more like, hey, do you feel good? Yes, let's plan something. And then like an hour later, it's like, oh, I'm sorry, I just can't. I'm like, so, and even with the kids, it's hard because they don't quite understand. And so when we're trying to plan it to go do something, or they have their own activity, and I have to get off work early to go take them, but at the same time, like I can't not work because I got a lot of stuff to pay for with her. It's tough. It's tough on her too because she knows that, because she's, what she's got going on. Everybody always asks me this, so I better say it. She's dizzy a lot, like
Hmm.
to where it's like to be real technical, it's inflammation induced vertigo. It's
Hmm.
not like, we tried doing that crystal thing where you're like, oh, lean on this side and see if your eyes flicker, right? And then I'll jerk you to the other side to flip. It didn't work on her because that's not where the vertigo is coming from. It's from
Hmm.
the inflammatory, you know, reactions to the mold, or if someone has Lyme, it'd be the same thing. And for her, it kind of all collected in her neck, a lot of which we think is past injuries and stuff like that. So it's as a relationship side, it's hard because I have to do what I know I need to do to be a husband and a dad, at the same time, like getting nothing like what other people would say was what I would, get in return. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think it's really beautiful that you're able to take this situation and create something out of it that's not only going to help you and your wife and finding a home that can allow healing to happen, but also like for other people and raising the awareness and being able to build better, because I think that's like the biggest problem. And like that kind of leads me to my next question of like, what do you think is the biggest issue in the building industry today that's leading to these issues? Or do you?
Um, Really, the biggest issues in the building industry, I feel like, is an imbalance of homeowner to builder expectations.
Mm,
And really, everybody's like, well, isn't that with every construction, every new build? Yes, but you got to make sure that the expectations of the homeowner is something that's brought up on very early on in the beginning. I just talked with someone
yeah.
uh, a little bit ago, had a meeting with them, and it's tough because people cry when I talk with them because they've gone through so much, and it's just like, I if I could do it for free, I would, but I can't. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
because most of these people that have all these problems are like, they're living in a tent outside their house,
Yeah.
or they're living in a camper outside their own house that they can't even afford to finish the remediation because they dug into it and they weren't doing it right, or they didn't test it correctly. And now they're just like, oh, it's everywhere. It usually kind of is everywhere, which is, in the Bible, I think there's even a part in Leviticus where it's like, burn it down, it's like they can't go back. But it's tough. So you got to know the expectations, and the homework that I gave the client in the interview today was, all right, I got some plan that I think that might work for you. I'm going to kind of work on that because I'm already doing it. So I'll save you a little bit of time there because I feel like what I'm doing now might help you, like this house plan. And it wouldn't cost you that much, right? Because everybody's got a budget. So I said, first, you got to give me your sensitivities, right? And she's like, well, I'm sensitive to everything. I was like, I know, but just try to give me the bulk of it. When someone has like Lyme disease or mold or something like that, right? You're darn near sensitive to everything. I will show you this. This is what I had to have my wife do, because after a while, she's like, please, can I just go get my hair done? I know it's going to suck. I'm like, you can, but you have to wear this, right? She's going to kill me if I show this. So I made her, so she was just getting her hair redone. I made her wear a carbon mask.
Okay. Yeah.
And she's like, she texted me too. And this was just a cheap carbon mask. Like, you can't use this all the time, but it was good for like a one-time thing. And she's like, I forgot it actually when I walked in, and I'm like, oh my gosh. She all of a sudden started getting dizzy and having a headache, right? It's not the stuff that was going on. And she's working with her Dr. Pompa coach too. And she's like, it's not necessarily what goes on your hair, but like what you're breathing, right? Because that's why indoor air quality is good, right? Because what you breathe goes directly into your bloodstream.
Yeah.
What you eat, you can expel, but what you breathe is like, it's there. You can't unbreathe it. And so as soon as she put that on, she's like, within 10 to 15 minutes, it was like my headache was gone and it disappeared. And I also couldn't smell it. So there's things that people are sensitive to that, some things could be, like my last interview, she's like, some of the glue down flooring would actually make my feet itch. And at first you're like, you're crazy. You know what I mean? But if you're into this space and you've gone through it with your wife, right? Or you have a builder that is sensitive to the things that are going on, it's not going to be crazy to them. And those are the builders. That's the experience that you want from a builder that's going to build you a healthy home. You should almost be afraid of a builder that has too much regular experience, because you're going to have a really hard time throughout the entire process convincing them that they should do something a little different. So, that makes sense.
Yeah, I usually encourage clients to work with a good architect and then to find a builder who is just open-minded. I mean, when people are, at least, they don't necessarily have, it's a benefit, absolutely. Like when they're health conscious like you are, like that's amazing. But even if someone's just open-minded and wants to build somebody a good home, I think that that's like, just should be number one when you're finding a builder. I guess I was going to ask this a little later, but I'm curious, like, since we're on the topic, what are some questions you think people should be asking when they're trying to vet their builder? Or what are the top red flags that you think people should avoid in a contractor?
Yeah. So that's a good question. Actually. So, right. Red flags are things that pop up into your head to where you're just like, man, that doesn't sound right. Or I don't know if this should, flow this way. First of all, when you're dealing with a special home, like a healthy, high performance home, like I like to say, you don't want to rush. Rushing is something that it'll just throw everything off balance, right? If you have someone that's like, oh, okay, let's just hurry up and let's get going, and yeah, we're gonna get it done in 6 months, or the homeowner's like, well, all these other people got these houses done in like 4 or 6 months, or like under a year. Like, shouldn't you be able to do that? And so it comes on both sides, right? You want to be the homeowner that can attract the good builder, right? Just like any relationship. But you don't want a contractor that will push back on what I would consider like new health tech, right? You always want to have somebody to be open and be like, oh man, I never heard about that. Can you give me more information on that? That doesn't mean the builder can't do it. That means he's open to like, hey, that might be a good idea. And in the end, he might be like, yeah, I could do that, but that's not super part of our system. We'd have to add a little bit more to our price or whatever because we need a little bit of time. Maybe we'll have the vendor help us and train us on how to do that certain thing, right? Like I was talking with a vendor actually less than a half hour ago about a new product that is not exactly how my build assembly is set to run now, but I'm going to look into it anyway, right? Like, what if I'm wrong? Like, I always ask myself, what if I'm wrong? Because if you don't think that you're ever wrong, then you're never going to learn anything. So watch out for that. Don't take the guy that has 30 years experience, right? Just because he's got 30 years experience. There's a lot of things that happened 30 years ago that you don't want his experience of. And it would be better for you to choose somebody that's literally never built a house before in their life, that you can give the time because they are willing and able and they've been learning a lot and they have a good mentor. That's really what you want, right? Especially when they have someone like you that has helped consulting them to go down the right path, right? You don't need one person to know everything. You need the team. Just like I have my subcontractors that like know more about plumbing than I do, right? Like I could almost build an entire house by myself if you give me enough time. But there's little things that the subcontractors know a lot better that can do it a lot quicker. So you got to have a team aspect.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned you had vendors out on site because I think when a contractor doesn't know how to use something, the companies want their product to be successful and they're always willing to help. So lean on them for resources. Like, I wish more contractors would, do that and utilize their technical supports and teams because there's people that will come out on site and actually help you make sure that these things are installed properly. So I love that you mentioned that. And yeah, just that, again, that curiosity, that openness. And something you mentioned too was healthy high performance. What does that mean to you specifically?
Well, I add the healthy in there because sometimes when I just say high performance, right? My tagline with PLH Exclusives, which is the company that I founded, it's the tagline is enhancing lives through high performance homes. But I have to add in there a little bit, what I always tell people too, you are only as healthy as your home is. If you add the little healthy part on there, it kind of helps explain the high performance part. Everybody's like, oh yeah, high performance. Are you talking like race cars and stuff like that? I was like, you can kind of make that analogy, right? Like obviously, a Toyota Corolla does whatever it does really good, right? But if you get a high performance car, like it's going to do about everything as well as possible. You know what I mean? And when we put the tag of healthy on there, it helps people relate to the fact that, hey, we're really focusing on making this house, totally health focused. There's a lot of other names for it. Like there's a reason why I'm like, oh, passive house only, or LED house only, or any of those other systems, because if you focus on health first, it's very easy to just like flip another little switch and like, oh yeah, we're passive now, right? Or, oh, we have all these other qualifications. We qualify for all these energy efficiency credits, right? Like that just comes naturally. But you can also have an energy efficient house that's not healthy. And that goes into like a lot of the stuff that you help people with. Like you have some great guidelines on non-toxic, paints and materials and things like that. You can have unhealthy stuff in a very energy efficient house, and it's not going to make it a healthy house. So that's where the healthy high performance name comes from. Yeah.
I love that. And, I'd be curious to know from you, what is the hardest thing about trying to build a mold resistant home in a world that is really still just building to code only? And maybe how are some ways that you go above and beyond code?
Well, code is getting better and you can see it happening incrementally. So like in Illinois, a lot of the codes that we adopt is just the international code. And they are working closer and closer to indoor air quality. And obviously the energy efficiency thing is there, right? Like you can get energy efficiency credits for about every appliance, right? Like all that stuff that's there. Um, the air sealing, which means the amount of air that you don't allow to come into your house uncontrolled, right? So all the windows and doors are shut, how much air can still get in through a certain crack, or, some people have drafty outlets, you know what I mean? Air sealing makes sure that you don't get the air in, but what we do with our systems that we're formulating everything with our vendor partners is creating an air sealed home that is vapor open, meaning it's not breathable, right? Like you need to breathe, not your house, but it needs to be able to dry out. So that vapor that travels through your walls has to be able to, not have any resistance. And some people are like, how does that happen? It's a lot of science, but you can stop the air, but let the vapor through, right? Just think of a good Columbia coat, right? Or like a good Gore-Tex hunting coat. You don't sweat in it because you can, breathe out. Like you don't get too hot in it when it's raining, but you don't get wet. Same thing with a lot of these smart weather resistant barriers that go on the outside of your house. So you want to make sure when it's above code, they don't really call for a lot of this crazy stuff. They do have better and better ACH 50 ratings that they're making people do. So what that means is there's like a big thing you put on your door, and there's a fan on there, and you pump the air in your house, or you could do out of your house, and you can gauge how much of that balloon essentially is deflating or inflating. And that's where you get that ACH 50 number. And the smaller the number it is, the less little holes that you got in your house, which could bring in bugs, which could bring in mold and toxins and all this stuff. You have no idea, right? So you don't want that stuff coming in. You want it to come in through your ERV or your fresh air return that's filtered and controlled. So those are a lot of the things that we're doing with that on top of the code currently. But it is good news to see the little bit of language. They're kind of, maybe you should do this, fresh air here, and the EPA, I have a print off of the EPA having their indoor air quality certification, right? And those are good steps to go above code for any builder.
Yeah, like the EPA Indoor Air Quality Plus.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Are you following those guidelines?
Yeah. And honestly, when you walk through it, it's just like, okay, you get in this space of, healthy and high performance and all these building practices, and you're like, this is probably what everybody should be doing anyway. But it's nice to have a little certificate that says, because you can hand that to a lot of times your inspector doesn't know what that is, right? But you can do that as your own self and say, and really what that is it goes in the guidelines of the same ACH 50 stuff, and then the ventilation of fresh air with like an ERV and things like that. So it's nice.
This is a little off topic because it's not indoor air quality, but one of the things a colleague of mine told me was that and I don't know if it's just Chicago or if it's all through Illinois, but are you required by code to use MC cabling on your building wiring?
As in the sheathing?
Metal conduit, like it's a metal conduit that.
Right. There's a couple different things that you could use to align with code on that. So like when I actually built a log home north of Joliet in Crest Hill. It was weird. It was like literally across the street from the pool. And they had to, I was actually at that point, I wasn't the GC on that one. I was just doing the erection of the log home. But I had to work with them because it was a full log home. So I had to pre-drill, through the logs I was stacking up to wherever there's outlets and things like that. And I had to make the holes big enough because yes, they had in that jurisdiction, they needed to have metal conduit. It wasn't flex metal, but it was the metal pipe went there. Yeah, fire code thing. And
That's honestly amazing because part of what I do and what I recommend for people is to use that conduit. And
Yeah,
I'm
for
learning
EMF reasons too, right?
EMF, right?
Yeah.
Because it will shield the dirty electric fields. And I found out recently that there's actually a few jurisdictions that mandate it. So
Mm.
that's great because I oftentimes I'm working the opposite direction where I'm trying to convince contractors and electricians to use it because
Mhm.
they use it in commercial settings, but they don't use it so much in residential. So I just didn't know if you were seeing that, which sounds like you are.
Yeah. Yeah. And that is great because, and I know you talk about these options too, is that sometimes people don't want to give up the just don't make things very EMF susceptible. You know what I mean? Like if you can just cut that out, you don't have to try to prevent it. You know what I mean? But there's a lot of things that people like in the house and or placements of certain electrical outlets and things that, okay, well, if you're going to do that, right, let's do conduit. Let's see if we can mitigate something that you don't want to eliminate, if that makes sense.
Right, right, right. You talked a little bit about log cabins, and I'm so curious. What it sounds like there's some nuances there. Do you want to share, like, how do you take an old log cabin and turn it into a higher performance home? What are some of the strategies there? Like, how do you air seal it? I don't really know much about log cabins. I've had a few people ask me about them, so I'm curious what your take is on them.
So when I went to so last year in Texas, right, Matt Reisinger had his first Build Show Live convention, which was super cool. And I accidentally at the very beginning just ate breakfast with absolutely everybody that was going to be on the show. And I actually had at that point it was my partnership wasn't named PLH Exclusives at that time. We're still working through. It was called Perfect Log Homes. That's why people where PLH come from. And so I was the log home guy. Like everybody's like, "What are you doing here?" You know what I mean? I'm like, you know what? Like you guys have a lot of stuff. You're put like, oh, we're gonna do this with the walls and use this product and everything. I'm like, or I could just make it a log and cut like 10 things out of this wall. You know what I mean? Um, but the good part about growing up essentially, or growing up in the industry of log home with my build background is you get to see something that's very structurally sound if it's well kept. I mean, it's bulletproof, right? Like it's flood proof. Like it's it's about as durable of a dang house as you can. And some people are like, oh, well, ICF house is all concrete and it's bomb proof. But I was like, yeah, but that also cracks. And after it cracks, you're kind of out of luck, right? But a log home is structurally, but it can give, it can move, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? And you can make the logs as big as possible. Uh, and so they were always giving me crap. The main thing I learned with log homes is you have to air seal it. You have to put on coatings that will protect the logs from the sun and the water. So all those control layers are essentially wrapped into that log wall. And the coatings have to be breathable, right? Like logs will always get wet by just the ambient humidity, right? And so you want them to be able to breathe out. Well, the certain coatings that you have to be breathable, right? You cannot just paint with acrylic your logs.
Yeah.
I've done a lot of log home restorations, and it's usually a lot of them are because someone's like, I'm just going to do some cheap paint on here and make it look good. And then it rots, because it can't breathe. And it's the
Right.
same thing that happens with any other high performance home is you have to let it breathe. Everything's going to get wet. You need it to dry out.
Okay, so with a log home, you have like the log and then you coat it. Is that something that you would do like once it's installed, you would just coat it or do they come pre-coated? And then how do you air seal it exactly?
So there's a couple different ways you can do it. The best way to do it is if you would never nick the logs or scuff them up and they were just perfect little Lincoln logs that all match together, that'd be awesome if they're all pre-stained and everything was just perfect, right? Because that way you can do it inside. It'd be all ready. You know what I mean? But it doesn't work like that way. So typically when you're building, especially like a full log home, right? Like you've got to do everything and then get your roof on, right? And get your windows in. And then you have to do all the caulking or chinking, right? Chinking's like the big stuff. Caulking is just, the
Okay.
air. And you want to be able to prep the logs properly before you do any of it. And in that case, like if you do have some surface mold or something like that, or in this case, if you have any like pests or anything that are kind of trying to get into the wood, you can treat that and prep that at that time and just kind of start fresh, and there's a lot of different safe ways that you can do that. But yeah, caulking, I love Sashco's caulk. I know there's a lot of people that are like, oh yeah, I use Sashco products. Yeah. I use Case's other stuff, I'm like, my first exposure to caulking was caulking a 9,000 linear feet of caulk on this log home for the city of Bloomington. Uh, that's a lot of caulking. So you get real good real quick. And what that does is it seals the cracks. It seals up the areas where the water will go in the logs but can't come back out. And it also, air seals with everything going on inside. And then the stain is what protects the logs, right? So the downside, right? Everybody's like, oh, well, what's the downside of logs? Well, not everybody wants to build a log home like they should, because you need the big overhangs. You need to shade it as much as possible, because when the sun hits it, just like any other house, it's going to deteriorate it. And when something is not running at peak performance, then it can have problems. So
it needs to be designed well and for the site. And are you using something like linseed oil to protect it, or what are you using to keep it permeable? And
no, linseed oil is an old school wood kind of thing, you know what I mean? But bugs love it because it's food for bugs and it's food for mold. So you really don't want to use it. Plus, it doesn't have any surface protection. You know what I mean? So we like to use either Sashco stains or Permachink stains, which is great because, they're breathable. Even Permachink stuff like smells good, right? And they're non-toxic. And so if you were thinking of, oh, I don't know what I should put inside my house, right? Because if I drywall it, right, then I'm afraid that the drywall is going to get too moldy, right? Like I tell everything can get moldy with dust on it, and you're going to get dust on everything if you don't clean. So it doesn't matter if you're living in a tin can. It'll get moldy when you enter it and make it dusty. But those are great options for some people that don't have a pine sensitivity. Do some tongue and groove, car siding, knotty pine, whatever you want to call it, and then put a good stain on it, and you got a breathable. It absorbs and helps regulate humidity in your home, and it looks awesome, smells awesome, and it's kind of timeless in many ways.
Yeah, that's cool. And then I know I keep asking about log homes, but I'm really not familiar, and I'm so intrigued. How do you go about insulating?
So there's a couple different ways that you can do it, and one is like an oxymoron of an insulation way. There's in the early 2000s, late 1990s, whatever. So the company that I'm with, as a rep for a log home company, they're also with those people were with another company, which was kind of the company that brought on like the Insul log. They'll call it like the Insul log, which really, when it come down to it, it was essentially a stick framed wall that displaced half of the log, and it would be considered a half log home. So instead of making the full log your entire wall, they would essentially cut the log in half, and there would be a conventionally framed wall between it. And then, then some people are like, well, I don't have to have the inside log in. I could do drywall here because I want to see some paint. And then they would do that, and they would stack the log on the outside. They can insulate the cavity of that wall any way they want to. And there was also some things where they used to a long time ago. They thought they were doing it right, but they was just little tweaks that they got wrong, where they just did rigid polyiso insulation on the outside before they put the logs up. Which is actually, if you're following me on Instagram, I have a project that I'm going to be doing where it was an old log home like that, and I've done some restoration on it, and they wanted me to build like a massive addition to it. To which I kind of matched it up as even as I can, high performance-y as I can, without be like, hey, the rest of my house is not high performance. Why are you going so crazy with it? So at that, I'm doing zip sheathing and Insul fast to kind of match the performance of what they're doing and everything. So that it'll be a cool project to watch.
Yeah.
But that's kind of how you would insulate a log home. Otherwise, the insulation value is not necessarily in terms of R value, but it's thermal mass, and your HVAC guy will plan that accordingly. So if you have a log wall at the farthest point, it's R 1.2 per inch of log, right? So if it's 10 inches of log, you have 1.2 times 10, right? So you have R12 if you want to do the R value. So that is one thing that a lot of jurisdictions don't allow with log homes, because if it's full log, it doesn't create the R value that they see they need. You know what I mean? But in the end, I'm just like, are you trying to save $1 in energy efficiency and losing $2 in health? You know, so it's that balance of what are you really paying for, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it's so fascinating. I'm gonna have to follow along more, and you should do some YouTube videos. Do you have YouTube videos?
I have a couple, and it's mainly like educationally things that I put up, mainly so that like one of my guys could watch it. Like, cause I tried anything intricate that like it would just take me forever to show somebody how to do it. I just do it myself and film it, right? Just like my coach says, the camcorder method.
Yeah.
And because there's a lot of little intricate stuff that you got to do that you just can't call a regular contractor. And even the one that I just did, it wasn't like super crazy, but I had some really good trim carpenter come up and be like, I don't know how in the world do you think they're going to do this. I'll give you a couple. But it's cool, right? These are things that you can put into a healthy home, and it doesn't have to look really stale and sterile. You know what I mean? This is just cool stuff because it's timeless. It's natural. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. There's something about the energy of like the wood too. I mean, I know that everyone's afraid of wood. I mean, I shouldn't say everybody, but a lot of people are afraid of wood after mold trauma. And I try to help people find the love for wood again, because it can be such a beautiful material. It can be so, you know, it's got the hydric buffering capacity and the breathability, and there's just that energy of the natural material that is
the
just
warmth.
the
Yeah.
warmth that I
You
don't
could
know.
get so cold building an energy efficient house.
Yeah.
Like cold, not like cold temperature, but like
Yeah.
just, yeah.
It's an energy that you can't quite measure, but it's there. And so that kind of leads me to with all the lumber, and you talked a little bit about it, like with the actual logs and the enclosure piece of it, but I'm wondering if you could speak on like, what do you do to protect lumber just in general on your build sites? Because moldy lumber is a big problem in new builds.
Yeah, that's a good question. And it's one thing that leads back to another question that you asked me. And it goes in line with the expectations, but the balance between the homeowner and the builder, right? If homeowners don't realize that the contractor has to do a little extra stuff, they're going to be like, well, this guy was cheaper over here. Like, why don't I do this? And you're like, I don't know. Why don't you get that cheaper guy to do as good a job as I'm doing? You know what I mean? Like, stop trying to make me race to the bottom with price here, you know? And with logs, you know, I get like a yard full of logs, right? And they've got to stay well kept. You know what I mean? These are very vulnerable, but can be like insanely strong building materials as long as they're kept up. So I always make sure, and I do the same thing with my trusses. I will stop that truss truck, you know, because trusses usually come on like a big rolling flatbed, right? It's literally a flatbed trailer with rollers on it, and they just tip it up and then just slide that all them trusses out. That's why you see a lot of these trusses on job sites just freaking everywhere, because the dudes just come and dump it when nobody's there, you know, or you thought they were going to be there then, and then they weren't. Then you come back and all of a sudden he showed up and they're on the ground, which is horrible. But if anything, I always make sure if I can't be there, I have slats laid out and I take a picture of where I have it, and I raise all that off the ground so that if the grass even starts growing, right, like it still has some airflow. It's not sitting on the dirt, because that's even worse. As soon as wood touches soil, there's something natural in it that says, hey, time to decompose. So you don't want to get it dirty. You don't want to have it on the ground. It's okay to get wet. That's one thing. It is okay to get wet, but it's got to dry. And the reason why some people don't like it to get wet is because when it is in a stack, it gets in between and then that doesn't dry out. So that's where a lot of people are like, oh, don't get it wet. In that case, yes. But you want to get it off the ground. So not only it's not touching the ground, but there is a little bit of airflow. And secondly, if they don't come tarped, which usually fresh lumber bundles will come with like a white tarp on it, right? And it's black on the inside, white on the outside. It's not clear. You don't want it to be clear. And I think I put a reel up about this a while ago with some log stuff. If it's clear, you have that greenhouse effect where any moisture that gets up in there is now condensing on the underside of that clear plastic when the sun hits it. And now it's just molding the heck out of everything. So yeah, the rain's not going to get in, but the moisture is just going to destroy it. So you tarp it with anything but clear tarp, and you leave the ends open so there's airflow, right? You don't want it to get wet, but you do want it to dry out. So those are some of the main things that you want to do for really any lumber that you have on site. If you can do it on like a rock bed, that's awesome too, like a staged area for all your lumber, because then you don't have to worry about weeds growing up around it and stuff like that. So
yeah, are you, if you're finding lumber that's moldy, are you sending that back to the lumber yard, or what are you doing? Are you planing it, like to remove any growth that you see? What's your strategy, like if it comes delivered with growth on it?
So I've honestly haven't seen any mold growth that's been that crazy that I couldn't deal with it there. And obviously, right, there's a lot of different types of mold. So you can even get LVLs or LSLs, which are laminated strand lumber or laminated veneered lumber, right? The orange stuff that you get, like the orange beams. Those stacked together could also, even though it's like crazy glued up stuff, those can have like little bits of like and I don't know what type of mold it is, but it's like white, right? You peel them off and it's like, where'd that come from? You know what I mean? And a lot of those, because they have so many glues or waxes on them, the roots of the mold really didn't get that deep. It can get wiped off. That can be fine. You know what I mean? And then same thing with oriented strand board, which is like OSB. A lot of that is so gluey that if you can catch that early on, you can usually treat that. And I don't obviously never use bleach. But there's decon, which is like a lime, a thyme oil type stuff, concrobium, and there's like a concrobium plus too. That's essentially like a salt based thing that kind of kills it and prevents it and dries it up, and then obviously you have, the cheap hydrogen peroxide. There's a lot of different things you can use, but the best thing that you can do is obviously remove it and then treat it. You want to make sure if it's kind of going too crazy, right, that you spray it first to kind of settle it down so that you're not just broadcasting it all over the place. You know what I mean? And you don't want to do any of this in the house, right? Because you don't know where it's going to go after it comes out. But if it gets too deep, yeah, you don't want to deal with that stuff. Like it's too hard. You don't want to charge your homeowner to do all that stuff. There is one thing I do want to mention this because I see it a lot on people posting things about, this wood is moldy, right? Mm-hmm. There is a thing, and you see it in logs a lot. And it's a natural phenomenon that happens in the staging areas of logging zones, or however you want to describe that. And it's called blue stain. And blue stain is something that is not going to hurt you. And you can tell the differences because it's not like spotty. You know what I mean? It's more like streaky with the grains because it kind of follows the grain structure, whereas just like a surface mold does not. So if you do see something and it kind of has like a blue tint, especially in white pine, it's blue stain. It's nothing to worry about. You don't need to try to get that out because honestly, you never will. but look for the spots. You know what I mean? Look for kind of the smears and the odd, not grainy looking dark colorations.
I did an Instagram post on that recently too about the sap stain fungi, which is that
Yeah.
blue staining
Mm-hmm.
that happens in the sapwood ring. Like you have the
Mm-hmm.
heartwood of the wood and or the log, and then the sapwood, and it's different. You can start to notice the patterning. There's a really great article on it too that maybe I can try to find and share in the show notes on noticing patterning in a lumberyard mold, right? So is it mold or is it the sap stain fungi,
Mm-hmm.
which would be harmless, you know? And so I always tell people to do like a tape test if they're unsure and they're working with somebody who's, you know, not, you can't, you know, if somebody isn't that knowledgeable, just do a tape lift test and then you know exactly what you're dealing with. But I also had a call with John Banta. We did an interview and you know, his take on cleaning is really just using surfactant based soaps and water. And he cautions against some of these essential oils because it can make it harder to detect issues down the road if you're trying to do some testing. So just something
Yeah, that's a good point.
And he didn't mention any specific products, but we just talked about like, you know, the actual ingredients and whatnot in these things. So
Yeah.
something else to consider.
Yeah.
But I am curious, what with these higher performance homes, especially log homes, what are you seeing in terms of costs? Like, what would it cost somebody a square foot maybe to do a higher performance home in general? And then how does that compare to a log home?
Yeah, percentages wise, I would, and this could be a big range to where I might as well not even say it in some sense, depending on what you're trying to compare, right? Are you trying to compare like the absolute cheapest thing that you could ever build compared to like something super nice, right? That alone is going to be a huge offset or imbalance of dollar per square foot, right? It's when it comes to like log homes, if I was going to do a home and it was just going to be, you know, drywall, vinyl siding, you know, just like the run of the mill lumber yard builder grade, just get it up. And I want to have something better than a tent type thing, right? To a, like a nice brick home or a log home. I feel like if you're wanting to go down the healthy high performance road, you don't necessarily have to go. It's not high end, right? Like I'm not building healthy for the wealthy. You know what I mean? And because of my background, I didn't grow up that way, right? Like I grew up farming. Like I figured out how to do stuff, and in many cases, like if I didn't have it, I tried to make it. You know, because I'm just that. I grew up with my grandma that lived through the Depression. You know what I mean? So that's in my head. It's very hard for me to work with someone, honestly, that has like an open book. Let's give me the most expensive stuff because it's just not how I grew up. But when we're talking about healthy high performance, you can range from like 10 to 20% more than what you would consider like a regular home. But honestly, usually what I always ask people or maybe just have a conversation with them about is, what's it going to cost if you don't do this?
Mm-hmm.
And most of the people that are finding me and wanting me to start building their houses and stuff like that, they're already sold, right? I don't have to convince them the fact that, hey, here's just an example, a 1,000 square foot house that's just like regular. And here's a 1,000 square foot house that you can have no regrets in with all your sensitivities, and you're not going to have to worry about, you know, mold as far as like what I built for you. And it would cost them more not to do it.
Yeah.
So square foot costs, I mean, that's too big of a range as far as different sides of the country, right? But yeah, if you want to gauge 10 to 20% more, that's probably what you're going to look at.
Yeah. I just wasn't sure if you were seeing like price per square foot in your side of the country as coming back as sort of, you know, between some sort of range, but I totally get it. It really depends on a lot of factors. And I always say that same thing too. Like was it going to cost you not to build it? I've had quite a few people who've reached out on their third home, because the first two had so many issues. And then at that point, I mean, it's such an expensive venture. So if you're going to do it, doing it right from the start, even if it feels like you're going a little bit above and beyond, is definitely worth it and could save you a lot of money in the long run. Is my take on it.
Yeah. And it's got to be right for you. You know what I mean? You're going to have a lot of great builders, right? That are going to come to you and be like, man, I don't do anything unless I build it right. Okay. Well, what's right to you, right? Are you building it right compared to the prescription of your client? You know what I mean? With all of their health problems. That's why some of the first things I talk about is like, what are you sensitive to? Right? Because that's going to dictate every price that I give you, you can be right and wrong at the same time.
Yeah.
Because your expectations aren't lining up with your homeowner. That's why that's a great question that you asked earlier on.
Yeah. I love that you're asking these questions to your clients. I love that you're innovating and learning and just taking into consideration those that are impacted. This has been such an amazing conversation. And I always love to close out all my guests the same way with the big question of, I would love to know that through all this, like your journey with your wife, your journey just in your career, like, is there anything that you can leave us with as like a moment for self-development? Like, is there something that you've learned along the way, something that people can take as a little tidbit for growth?
Yeah, I'm unapologetically heavy on kind of how I see things, right? Like it's very important to me that you're walking with Jesus, because he's already figured stuff out. Like you gotta be there, right? And then resist fear, because as you're walking on that path, the only thing that can stop you is your fear pushing you off the path, right? And then remember to be grateful for everything that you have, even your sick wife, because ultimately it has led me to my purpose, right? Her pain was my purpose. The one thing that I complained about the most was my calling. And so pursue purpose and do that over pursuing pleasure, right? Because you will always be more fulfilled over following your purpose. And everybody that you talk to is just going to know, right? They're going to know that something's different with you. Every way that you act, how you make decisions, the people that you surround yourself with. So those would be the four things that I could hopefully leave everybody if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, right?
Honestly, I feel that gratitude is such a simple thing we can do to shift our mindset, even when we're in the worst of times, like thinking of one little thing and just focusing, like our energy flows where attention goes, right?
Yeah.
And
I like that.
I really believe that. And it can be really hard when we're going through health issues to put all of our attention on that. But we have to remember that our energy is going to go where our attention goes. So,
yes. Awakening spaces. The space that you put yourself in is your environment that creates who you are. You know what I mean? So be very intentional about the places that you live, the people that you live with, the things that you put in your head, and the things that you allow yourself to tell yourself. It's important. So I'll great.
Absolutely. Beautiful conversation. Yeah. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
Is that all right?
I always going to drop that question at the end of every episode.
For sure.
Deep with me.
Yeah, it's good. Yeah, like you're doing amazing. I love the flow of the podcast, right? Because there's a lot of very popular podcast people that are doing the same thing that you're doing, right? So that's great. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you so much, David. It was so great having you here. And how can, before I let you go, how can people find you? How can they work with you? Please share.
Yeah, that's a good question. So the best way to get a hold of me, because I'm going pretty deep, on Instagram now as of like last October, this last October. So it's my Instagram, and if you don't have Instagram, get it because I'm on it and Ashley's on it too, right? So it's at David Aurbeck, which is David, right? And then my last name right after, Aurbeck. And you'll see all my stuff on there. You'll see that, we follow each other here. And that's the best way to get a hold of me. If you want to, I have something I can kind of give you guys, and it's like a builder survey. And I've been just kind of giving people this because it really helps them understand what your contract, whether I'm going to build your house or not, what your contractor should be really asking you. Like, what is the initial things that you should be going through at the beginning stages? So if you want to click follow and then message me Awakening Spaces, right? I will send you like the link to the build survey, and fill it out there. Like if you're obviously like in, Egypt, right? Put on there like, hey, we're not going to build, but like, thank you for the whatever. You can go through there and look at all the questions and fill it out if you want to or whatever. And honestly, there's some people, like there was someone in California that filled it out just in case they were close enough to an area that I knew someone that I trusted in California to do that. So that'd be the best place to get a hold of me. I'm on Facebook too, but you can follow all the links and everything. And you can even go to the website as well, where I have my blog and stuff like that through the Instagram.
Perfect. And then where are you servicing? Where are you building for clients? It's just...
Yeah. So right now I feel like I'm called to really help get this launched very well and solidified for a lot of people in central Illinois. It's kind of the battleground, I guess you want to call it, that I've grown up in. And it's just like super moldy. Illinois is literally geographically a hole in the United States. And so there's just a lot of mold. I mean, we get it all the time. And like my last videos on just like corn and like ag mold, you get it like 10 months out of the year. You might have a couple months where it's just kind of died down, but otherwise it's all the place. So central Illinois. And then I'm also trying to get established in northern Wisconsin, where we got some property, because that is an area where if I could bring my wife there and we could move there, that automatically eliminates just the bombardment of the mycotoxin that she is battling the most, right? Even though I have an ERV in the house and all that stuff, I can move her there. So temporarily, so kind of northern Wisconsin, central Illinois primarily right now. But long-term goal, I tell my guys I'd like to be the Chick-fil-A of healthy high performance, meaning we kind of have like a franchise of project managers that are kind of in every state, right? That can help people, even if it's just the transition between you and the subcontractors, right? Like you're leading everything with helping the customers on what everything should be doing. And we are the mindset and the boots on the ground to make sure it happens. So if we can get this process systematized, I like to be able to kind of hire on and plant people around so that we just don't have to be secluded to Illinois and Wisconsin.
Yep. And we can sure use it all throughout the United States. We need it. So I love that. Well, thank you. I will put all of that in the show notes too for anyone who's listening who wants links to all this stuff. I'll put all the links in there so you can have quick access. And awesome. Thanks again, David.
I appreciate you, Ashley. Thanks. Thanks everybody for listening too.
Thanks so much for tuning into the Awakening Spaces podcast. If you're ready to take what you've learned and start applying it to your own home, then there's a few ways that we can support you. On our website, you can find a collection of free and paid guides and courses that will walk you through everything from designing a healthy home to choosing safe materials and reducing mold, chemical, and EMF exposure. And if you're looking for more personalized guidance, then we also offer one-on-one consulting and design support, where we act as your owner's representative to help you plan, manage, and execute your new build or renovation project with confidence. You can explore all of these offerings on our website at awakeningspaces.com. And if this podcast has helped you in any way, we would be so incredibly grateful if you would like, subscribe, and share this podcast so that it can reach more people. Until next time, thank you so much for listening and being here and stepping into what it means to be an awakened homeowner.